Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're breaking down the huge, very public fallout between the United States and its European allies over a new war in Iran. And let me tell you, the battle lines aren't just in the Middle East. They are being drawn right across the Atlantic.
And it all really kicked off with this. After the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said no, at least at first, to allowing US strikes from British bases, President Trump, he didn't pull any punches. This comment set a really confrontational tone for the whole crisis.
That quote gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? We're talking about a massive transatlantic rift. The US goes to war in Iran, and suddenly its oldest, closest allies are pushing back, hard. And that sparked a diplomatic firestorm it's still playing out.
And that pushback came fast. Spain, for instance, barred U.S. military planes from using its bases. And Trump's reaction? It was just as fast. Not just a formal complaint, but a threat to cut off all trade. This thing escalated from a disagreement to a major economic standoff in a heartbeat.
And it wasn't just about blocking planes or logistics. Oh no, France decided to back Spain, but then took it a huge step further. President Macron came out and publicly declared the U.S. military action was illegal, outside the framework of international law. I mean, that's a direct challenge to the very foundation of the entire operation.
But here's where it gets really interesting. You might think all of Europe was on the same page, right? Not even close. The continent was totally split. Some countries were cooperating, others were in open defiance. And that's where the political chess game really began. And you can see that split so clearly right here. You had leaders in the UK and Spain getting criticized and even threatened for resisting. But then you look at Germany's chancellor and Italy's prime minister. They cooperated, they gave base access, and they got public praise from Trump. It was a classic carrot and stick approach, just playing out for the whole world to see.
Okay, so with all this public fighting, the name-calling, the economic threats, you have to be asking, is this it? Is the alliance just over? Well, this next part is all about digging into that, the rhetoric versus the reality of what's really going on behind the headlines.
Because on the surface, it sure looks like it's collapsing, right? But according to one expert, if we only focus on the fiery headlines, we're actually missing the much, much bigger picture of what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, Professor Fawaz Gerges from the London School of Economics has a warning for us. Don't get distracted by the words. He argues that the true state of this alliance isn't about what these leaders are saying to the cameras. It's about what their militaries are actually doing on the ground.
And boy, do their actions tell a different story. Because at the exact same time they're publicly arguing with Trump, countries like Spain, Italy, France, and the UK are moving some serious military hardware into the region. Why? To defend against those same Iranian threats. So get this, while they're not directly supporting the US war, they are absolutely providing indirect support and protecting their shared interests.
So what gives? Why say one thing and do another? Well, according to Gerges, it all comes down to this idea he calls the American strategic umbrella. The feeling, deep down, that for all their disagreements, European leaders believe they still ultimately depend on the sheer military might of the United States for their security.
But what if that feeling of dependency, that whole strategic umbrella, what if it's starting to change? Because a totally new power dynamic is emerging, and the proof is coming from a place you might not expect at all, the war in Ukraine.
Just look at this timeline. It reveals a really stunning shift in who has the leverage. Only a year ago, you had European leaders practically begging President Trump not to cut aid to Ukraine. And now the United States is the one officially asking Ukraine for help. So why the flip? It's all about experience. Ukraine has spent years fighting on the front lines against the exact same type of Iranian-designed Shahad drones. You know, those cheap but incredibly effective kamikaze drones. And all that specific battle-tested experience has suddenly become a vital strategic asset for the U.S. As Michael Bosierkiev of the Atlantic Council puts it, President Zelensky is now holding a much stronger deck of cards. And this really shows that in modern warfare, power isn't just about having the biggest army anymore. It's about having the right specific experience for a very specific threat.
So, let's pull back. What does this all mean for the future of alliances? This whole surprising saga shows us that the old rules for how countries work together, they're being totally rewritten, right now, in real time.
What this conflict is really showing us is a new reality. The relationship between the US and Europe isn't breaking, but it is changing in a fundamental way. It's shifting from that old hierarchy of a leader and followers to something much more complex and transactional. It's almost like a marketplace of skills, where strategic dependence is no longer a one-way street.
And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In a world where power is constantly shifting like this, what does it even mean to be an ally anymore? What does that word really stand for in the 21st century?